Welcome,
Hello, everybody.
episode 3.
Yeah, and we're doing this the real YouTube way with Galen holding the camera at a more flattering angle so you can see the view outside of the bedroom window, which is sunny and looks very beautiful outside, except it's probably,
It says it's 83, but feels like 95.
yeah, and pretty humid. So we're hanging in the house mostly today, doing a relaxing Sunday, and we're going to talk about what it's been like so far to not speak the language and how we've managed to get around and do stuff successfully and not so successfully with a few examples to share. So first, how to make rice. You want to start with rice?
Sure, but Denise doesn't know how to make rice.
Yeah. And
Only Galen
yeah,
can.
only because I'm willing to poke buttons until I can maybe turn it on, and successfully made rice twice. So I'm not sure I remember the button pushing pattern, but it works. And we can use our fancy technology nowadays to take a picture and translate, but the language on the rice cooker is not comprehensible. And so, for another example, Denise has done laundry a couple times.
Many times now, and it's quite exciting as well. There's sort of a dryer, but everybody cautions you against using it because it uses a lot of energy and takes like 3 hours to dry. So I've got the washing part down. But after I dried our towels, they were super crunchy, so I tried to put them in the dryer, and the setting that I chose was something like parboiled, just trying to release the...
Extreme not boiled or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the translation there. So, I mean, a lot of the times it's fine, and we've actually used this to communicate with people. I managed to buy myself a new razor so I could cut my hair with a picture on my phone. But there's plenty of times it doesn't work so great. But we're going to start with a successful trip, which was to a jazz club where we got to hear some young kids play some very straight up jazz, and the setting was very cool.
Very
And
cool.
we'll give you a little snippet of the music to listen to.
Yeah.
But I guess the point here is Galen and Denise looked at a map online, figured out what bus to take there, got there pretty efficiently.
And had a lovely evening.
Yes,
Managed to pay for our drinks and food.
yes.
Which, by the way, you can't have a drink here unless you buy food. There's some sort of Korean mandate that if you're going to drink alcohol, you must purchase some food as well.
Yeah, which seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
And I think the cover was like $3.
So cheap.
So the second example, and probably the best one of the whole principle here, is Denise's experience doing Korean aerobics in the big area in front of our apartment building.
It's right across the street. It's Monday through Friday from 7 to 8 p.m. I wish it was 7 to 8 a.m. And it's definitely women my age. And everyone was exceedingly welcoming and very encouraging, although the heat and humidity definitely slowed me down a bit. It was super fun, and I plan to go a couple times a week as long as I can handle the weather.
And it's kind of a metaphor because obviously the conversation was nothing more than welcome. I think there was a "What are you doing here?"
Yeah.
and plenty of gestures to come back. And also, I guess, to explain to you that it's going to rain tomorrow, so don't come
Yeah,
tomorrow.
a lot of this. This means no. So no, no.
And no means it's going to
Rain,
rain tomorrow,
rain.
so don't come. But that was successful. Just to do it again. People were very welcoming, even though there was no actual conversation that happened.
Yeah.
And so the third example is our trip to a market and a museum, which was a semi-failure and a semi-success, depending on how you want to count. We've used the technology to figure out the buses. It's not perfect because sometimes you actually have to know how to write in Korean to tell the map where you want to go. But after an hour bus ride, we got to this market, which was cool to wander around
Very
in.
cool.
We had a different kind of fried pancake for lunch and some donuts for dessert.
Yum.
And one of my colleagues, Elon, came with us because she's, I guess, more in the explore soul as opposed to drink all night culture.
She's the person that I'm going to be working in her classroom starting this week as well.
Yeah, but we'd also planned to go to the War Memorial Museum, like the history of the Korean War, which we were told is very interesting and requires at least a couple days to visit. And so we took a long walk by this big gate that has been rebuilt from, I don't know, the 13th century or something like that, to try and find a bus. We ended up walking as far to find the bus as we would have walked to get to the museum itself. And when we got on the bus, we got on the wrong bus.
Well,
And
first we were told we couldn't get all the buses that came up. The driver
That's
kept
right.
going like this. So I guess the
We
drivers
were at the end of the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
we,
then
in desperation, got on a bus
any bus,
that didn't take us anywhere close to where we wanted to go.
not at all.
So we got had coffee and a sweetened waffle, and then came back home.
So no museum yesterday, but we will get there.
Yeah. So next segment again is going to be Galen on the first few days of actually teaching classes at APIS. And so if you're interested, stick around. If not, Denise is going to check out. Yes. Thanks. First, I want to shout out to my colleague Jonathan Kwan, who emailed me about starting school again and how it's still challenging after 16 years to get into the right space and not be stressed out. And I emailed back to him about how I'm having a teacher nightmare again. I had them occasionally as administrator. Sometimes I had what were just good old-fashioned teacher nightmares. But I had a straight-up teacher nightmare right before school started this year. And I guess that's sort of representative of how I'm going through all the same stuff, getting things ready, anxiety about learning 41 names, which is a little harder when almost all of them are in a language and names that I'm not familiar with, and feeling like with 5 different sections plus an advisory, even though it's fewer students, I still don't have the names down by a long shot. I've set a goal for me by the end of the first week. I don't think I'm going to make it, but I've got the cards and I'm going to call on students by their names and all those kind of start of the year teacher things that I think I have under my belt, but they've been rusty and I've got to work them out. The start of school, like I said before, in terms of what the school's trying to have us work on in terms of equitable assessments and focus on deeper levels of learning and projects rather than simple tasks, aligned very much with my thinking about what good instruction should be about. But what does that mean in this context, and what kind of text can I access? I've talked to the school about getting some of the online platforms available that we've had at Los Altos that I never actually got to use before, but I was curious about, and now I get to see if I can actually make them work. So I'm going through the beginner teacher part, or at least the beginner using of technology part, to figure out what really makes sense to integrate into my classroom in an effective way. Like I said before, people have been very supportive and encouraging. But it's, being a new teacher again at the beginning of the year with 3 new preps. And in some ways, the AP language and the freshman class, I think, are going to be the easiest to find a rhythm in because they really are similar to what I've taught before. The creative writing elective, I'm really excited by. And I think most of the students in the class, and it's only 10, took it because they want to be writers, and some of them so they've already started novels, which I think is really cool, but I don't actually want to read them because I'm sure they're like 8th grade YA things that I'd like to give them shorter things to give feedback on than a 400-page 8th grade YA novel. Don't let them see this video. But I'm sure there's interesting stuff that they're going to want to work on, and they're enthusiastic about the idea of like being a writer. But I think there's a couple of students in the section who don't speak English or Korean. That's going to be rough to work on creative writing, so we need to figure out how that pathway is going to work. And so I think, like anywhere, there's always going to be a range of needs and a need to address individual needs in a way that makes the idea of just having the planning nailed down a lot more complicated. A couple quick examples of more specific things that have been going on. So for one, cafeterias, they're pretty good, and you have a choice of Korean food or quote-unquote global food, which I've had one lunch of Korean food, which was totally good, and for $2.50, I think I'm going to be eating lunch at school most of the time, rather than bringing lunch like I used to do at Los Altos. And the quote-unquote global food I had was a hamburger with a piece of pineapple and like a French fry with a cute little hat toothpick to the top and brown gravy and potatoes, which not sure what part of the globe that's from, but it was good. And on Friday, instead of teaching creative writing, I looked at my schedule and then at the attendance we take online, and I thought, well, wait a minute, creative writing, it looks like I'm supposed to be teaching it today. But I looked back at my schedule and it says I don't teach it on Fridays, I teach it on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or rather Mondays and Thursdays. And so I emailed the principal and said, am I teaching this class on Friday? Today. And he emailed back right away, which is good because he said, oops, yes, forgot to tell you. So I had the lessons planned and knew what was going on, but that was a little bit of a shock for the first Friday that ends at 3:55. So I guess the theme was it's hard to start the school year as a teacher. To get really to that place is like, it must be like the football for the 49ers when they start the first practice back. And they've been working out over the summer, but it's not the same. And that's where I am right now. I'm just like the 49ers. See you again, guys. Thanks very much. I'm glad some of you actually stick this out to the end of the recording. Bye.